High plains of the Midwest, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever your time zone might be. My nod to the late and great Art Bell. I'm Keith Sharp.
And I'm G. Dressel.
And we welcome you to Life After Life, a paranormal webcast where we talk about the paranormal, UFOs, or the unexplained. And the biggest question of them all, what happens when we die? Stay tuned. Hey,
Whoa.
good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, we got a question for you guys.
Just to kick off the show.
We've
We've been doing a lot of preparation on the Yuba County 5, but then this came up.
It just makes no sense to me. So I'm going to ask you guys. JJ says, "Hey, Pam." Yeah, sorry, Pam we're expecting an ice storm tonight, and she is a nurse, and they're making her stay there at her facility for 2 days so that she doesn't miss her work.
Crazy.
Man, that's devoted.
Ice storms are no joke, though.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, I doubt we'll be going to work tomorrow, and I'm kind of even wondering about Thursday because they're saying Thursday is supposed to be maybe even 2 inches of ice.
Dude, it's supposed to be ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I got a question. We have the great Drew Beeson on.
Dude.
But before that, me and Garrett. Yeah, I don't even know if I want to bring this up. It's just
Go ahead.
Okay, so when I played football, our coach, like if we were messing around, he would say, "Boys, get on the goop stick."
Get on the goob stick.
Get on the goop stick.
Goob stick.
Yeah, and we all looked at each other like, "What the fuck's the goop? What's the goop stick?" You know, what's he talking about?
And it definitely wasn't a glue stick. Because why would you say that?
Yeah, it wasn't a glue stick. My allergies are bothering me, so I'll be blowing my nose probably the whole show. But if anybody has heard that term goob stick, tell me what it is. I don't know. I've wondered that for
a lot of years. I
played football for 2 years.
Yep.
And Sharp, get on the goop stick.
Get on the goop stick, Sharp.
Yeah. Or no, it was more Sharp, get a lap.
Yeah.
Quit your horse playing.
You got your allergies kicking in, huh?
Oh,
Everybody's
man.
allergies in Oklahoma, dude.
And they shouldn't be because it's 20 degrees outside right now.
Yeah, but it was like 70 degrees yesterday.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
I know, yeah. Yeah, my nose is like a Coke user's nose.
Is it running?
Oh, it's not. No, I mean it's so raw.
I was gonna make a joke.
It bleeds a lot.
Is he like a Coke user?
Like
that booger sugar?
like a Coke, like a Cokehead nose.
Yeah, Keith is a Cokehead.
No, I'm not a
It's
Cokehead.
joke.
But I do.
Look at us.
I had to start.
Cokeheads.
Yeah, they probably
a little bit.
No, I had to start using a humidifier, man, just to get moisture in my nose because man, my nose bleeding constantly.
Really?
Yeah.
You've got a bleeder.
Got a bleeder. But anyway, yes. Sorry, guys. We're going on I'm looking to see if there's a goop stick definition.
So goop means when you think you're smart or funny, but really you're awkward and weird.
Yeah.
That's what goop means.
Imagine me being a smart ass to anybody.
Yeah. Can't imagine.
Spent my life in detention through school. But no. So yeah, goop stick. Get on. I don't think he was saying because we thought, well, maybe he's saying get off the goop stick. In other words, quit being a smart ass.
Yeah. Get off the goop stick.
Get off the goop stop. Like if I said something,
yeah.
You know, smart alecky.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was get on the goop stick.
Well,
so I don't see anybody.
Maybe we can solve the Yuba County 5 and the goop stick tonight.
I think they're ready for the Yuba County 5.
Hey,
no one's even
I'm
talking about the goop stick.
I'm so glad.
Maybe Drew knows what the goop stick is.
I'm so glad that we're going to do this case though, for real. Bringing it.
All right, Drew, we're going to bring Drew on. This case is, first of all, Drew, do you know what the goop stick is?
I've never heard of that term. I mean, I'm from Texas. I've never heard of it. Both my grandfathers were high school football coaches. I've never heard of it.
Okay.
I played football for 2 years, and my coach would say that, get on the goop stick.
Get on the goop stick. All right.
And then make you run a lap or something. And it's like, I think he meant like when he said get on the goop stick, like guys pull it together. I think that's what he was meaning. But the
meant something to him.
Yeah. I forgot to say he was a child. No, I'm just
oh my God.
No, but that's what I mean. You could go that way with what's a goop stick?
It really is open-ended.
It is. Okay, so everybody, we want to welcome back Drew Beeson.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And he has written many books, actually. Out of Bounds is this one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, this is about the Yuba County 5. Drew, this case is freaking insane. I don't even know what to ask you. I mean, I've got questions, but it's like there's so many different pathways you can go through on this thing. And by the way, your book's great, and I encourage anybody. You can find it on Amazon. It's called Out of Bounds. I encourage you to pick it up, man. The cool thing about it is I read a bunch of stuff in there that I hadn't heard before. And Drew also talked to some of the family members of some of the victims. And Drew is one of the best things I've read in a long time.
What brought you onto the case?
A YouTube video actually called The Boys from Yuba City. I mean, it's actually called the Yuba County 5, but the name of the video I saw was called The Boys from Yuba City. And it was one of the better watched YouTube videos on it. And I'd never heard of the case till then. Yeah. And I was just blown away when I watched that video. I was like, golly, did anyone ever write a book about it? And I found out that no one did. And later I befriended a guy that's also writing a book about it. His isn't out yet. His name's Tony Doug Wright, and he's been researching his book for years. So I ran into Tony doing my research and writing my book. So, we just really get into the case really deep, but it was a YouTube video for me. And I think for Tony, it was a podcast. So it's just, the ways now we can find out about cases like this that you never heard of before. Now that we're just trying to get the word out and coming up on the anniversary of the disappearance of these guys on Thursday, it will be, I think 44 years, something like that. It was the 44th anniversary, I think. Right about that, because it was 1978, so I'm somewhere in there. So we're just getting it bigger and bigger and trying to hopefully get some answers and solve this one.
Before we get into it, I was going to ask you something. Man, I scoured the net trying to find just pictures from, I'm going to call it the crime scene, because I don't know what else to call it. There are rarely any pictures of anything. I mean, I found a picture of the car, which was a grainy black and white.
Yeah, that's all there is.
And you had that one picture, I think, of the trailer, didn't you?
There's one good color picture of the trailer, and it came from film footage from the Sacramento history archives or something like that, from the city of Sacramento, California, because Yuba City is not too far from Sacramento. And that's it. That's a newspaper article there you're putting up, but that is the actual trailer that they found Ted Weir's body in. And then you see there's like a little landing there, and then there's that adjoining trailer. And I think there's also might be one in front of that, because when people first started talking about this case on YouTube and stuff, and they would do a layout, they would show like a single trailer, or draw a trailer, and then they'd show some other ones that were just like around it, kind of like a circle. But it wasn't like that. It's like, obviously, that photo you're putting up, it was the trailer, then a landing, then a trailer, then I think another landing, and then another trailer where they had some additional supplies. But
so did they check all the trailers to see? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Of course, after they found Ted, they scoured them. They found everything that they could find.
Right.
And so the only color photo of that is actually from the film footage from the Sacramento archives that came out, that a YouTube researcher named Shannon McGarvey, who's got a podcast coming out, by the way, in 2 days on the anniversary on this Thursday coming up from Megalo Media. It's going to be the most in-depth deep dive into this case it's ever been undertaken. I have a small part in it. Some other guys I know, Tony Doug Wright, Shonkel Williams. But she's done some amazing work with her team to put this podcast together. So there'll be some stuff in that I probably never heard. And
that's cool. That's
some interviews Thursday? I've never heard. Yeah, that's coming out Thursday. If you type in Yuba podcast or Yuba County 5 podcast, it'll come up. It's from Mopac Audio. And it's going to be, I think it's 5 parts, but I think 2 parts are going to be dropping on Thursday. So you definitely want to check that out. They have an Instagram page. If you go to Yuba podcast, under Mopac Audio, you'll see the page. It's just for this podcast coming out, and that's going to be fantastic. It is going to be as deep as you can go down the rabbit hole for this case is going to be this podcast coming out.
So talking to this guy, did you learn anything that you didn't know?
There's going to be some stuff I didn't know probably coming out on the podcast. It's a lady who's the host, and she is a primary researcher and the senior producer. And, there's definitely going to be some things I didn't know. Nothing that's solving it. If that happened, I'd know already. They would have told me. But but probably some definite, new angles I haven't thought of before, and some interviews that I didn't think were probably even possible. I think they're actually going to talk to the guy that found Ted Weir's body in that trailer.
Oh my God, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to be mind blowing. I don't know how they found that guy either. I didn't find him. And
so that was one of the bikers, right?
Yeah, one of the motorcyclists. It's either him or his son, but I think it's the guy himself. From after hearing the trailer. So there's stuff in there I don't even know. I mean, I'm gonna have parts in it, but I wasn't involved with the production, so I don't know everything they have. So I'll be as excited as anybody to check this thing out.
I just found that page on Instagram. I'll share that.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, give it a follow.
Yeah,
give them a follow, and that page will update everything, and then have a link to, of course, all the platforms. It'll be everywhere that you can get podcasts, but it's definitely on Apple and everything.
So for those who haven't heard about this case, Drew, can you just give a brief synopsis of what this is about, basically? And then
this is a missing persons case. It's 5 guys. That's why it's called the Yuba County 5. It's 5 adult men. There's a picture of them there. And they went missing on February 24th of 1978. And these guys were special. 4 of the 5 of these guys had learning disabilities. And they kind of ran the spectrum. You had Jackie Hewitt, the guy on the left. He was the most affected. He had an IQ around 50, so he was just really, really slow, a slow learner. They all went to regular schools, though. The least affected of 4 of them was a guy named Jack Madruga. His nickname was Doc, and he was the one that drove these guys around everywhere they went in his prized possession, 1969 Mercury Montego. It was his baby. I mean, he kept that car in perfect condition. And then you had Bill Sterling as one of the guys. Was real religious. He'd read religious texts to patients in the hospitals. Just really good guy. Ted Weir, his nickname was Teddy Bear. He's the one that kind of has the bushy hair. He had learning disabilities too, but he went to regular high school. He was a good softball player. So these guys were all really athletic, and they were known as the boys in a group, and that was a loving term that they used for them because they had real nice dispositions, because they were basically boys in men's bodies, and that's kind of why they were called the boys. Very rather affectionately. And the 5th member of the group was a guy named Gary Mathias, and Gary did not have learning disabilities, but he did suffer from schizophrenia, and he was on medication, 3 different medications to control his schizophrenia, which that was being done at the time that he disappeared. He was on medications. He was taking them regularly because his stepfather was really good about making sure he saw him physically take his medicine, because if he didn't, he could get really, really kind of crazy, if his mind could take over. And Gary had been in the Army. He had a violent past, a lot of barroom brawls, punched a cop out once. He attempted sexual assault of his cousin's wife. So, Gary wasn't on his medicines, and, he had, prone to illegal drug use too. He could really kind of go off, basically. This adds just a really weird dynamic to this case. You got 4 guys with learning disabilities and 1 with schizophrenia, which kind of made a strange group.
There's a story in your book where I can't remember if it was his relatives or a couple, but they had a little 3-year-old, and he said, "Didn't I kill you once?"
Yeah. To the little girl. Yeah, like he had something taking him over. Yeah, and that's just basically how Gary's mind was when he wasn't steady on his medication. He could, say things that were really bizarre, and he would seem to kind of believe them, and he did have a violent past, but up until the time he went missing for about a couple of years, he had a really good mix of medications that they got him on. They finally got the right mixture of 3 different drugs, antipsychotic drugs that he was on that just worked well for him, so he was basically like anyone else when he was being regulated out on those drugs. And that's, from all accounts, that's what he was doing up for about a couple of years when they went missing. So he was pretty steady on it. And these guys all knew each other because they went to a vocational training center called the Gateway Projects. And that's where 4 of the guys met Gary. Actually, Ted kind of knew Gary because they lived on the same street. Ted Weir did. But how they all formally met was, 4 of the guys were already friends, what they call the boys, the 4 of them with learning disabilities. And that's why they were at Gateway, because they would train these guys. They would teach them a skill and, just a place to hang out. And they also taught them things like sports. And they were on the Gateway Gators, which was a basketball team that played in Special Olympics tournaments. And Gary was brought in to teach these guys how to play basketball a little bit better. They were all good athletes. Gary was too, despite his checkered past. He was a high school football player. pretty good, and he was a decent basketball player. So they brought Gary in to kind of teach these guys, a little bit more about basketball, and worked out with them in the gym. And Gary loved playing on that team, even though he didn't have a learning disability, but he was still with the schizophrenic, just kind of considered one of them. So he was able to be a part of that Special Olympics team. And the day after they went missing, they were supposed to play in a Special Olympics tournament, like a top tournament, and their team was probably going to win because they were really good, and they were going to win a trip to Los Angeles and all this kind of thing. And they were all looking forward to playing in that game on Saturday, February 25th. And that's all they could think about. But the night before, they were going to go see their favorite basketball team play, which was the UC Davis Aggies, and that's a college in Sacramento, and they lived near Sacramento. So that was their team. Their hometown team was the UC Davis Aggies, and they were going to go watch them play a road game at Chico State University, the Chico State Wildcats. And that was just an hour's drive away from where they lived, about, kind of just almost due north, about an hour away. And, they just thought they were going to go up there, watch the game, and come home. So none of them even took a jacket. I think Gary may have taken a light jacket. So they weren't, planning on being gone long. It was kind of a chilly night, but they thought, we're just going to be riding in the car. Well, why worry about our jackets or whatever? So they filled up the car. Jack Madruga was driving that night. All five guys were in his car. They went to Bill Sterling's parents ran a gas station called Miko in Yuba City. They filled up the car with gas. He got a $10 allowance, and then off they went, hour north to Chico, California, to watch their team play. And they were in great spirits because their team won, the UC Davis Aggies. I think it was kind of a pretty easy game because I think Chico State was terrible that year. But UC Davis won. So, it wasn't a well-attended game either because it was just kind of a formality type deal.
Right.
And I don't think there was a whole lot of people there, but the people remembered seeing the boys at the game. And their team won, so they were real happy. And they went after the game. People saw them leave the parking lot in Jack Madruga's Montego, and they went to a place called Bears Market and got snacks for the hour trip home. They got drinks and little things like that for the ride back. And the store clerk remembered them coming in. He said they were real high spirits, and she remembered being kind of mad at them because they came in right before it was her closing time. So now she was going to have to stay at work later to close the store because these guys just walk in with like 2 minutes to closing time. So she remembered being mad about that. But that's, one of the reasons which she remembered them so well coming in. And she was the last person to ever see these five guys together alive. And, of course, didn't know it at the time. So it's still the night of February 24th of 1978. And these guys don't come home. They all lived at home. Even Gary, they all lived with their parents. So when it became midnight, some of the parents were still up waiting for him, and nothing, no one showed up by then. They should have been home by midnight at the latest. 3 a.m. comes around, and now they're getting into a panic. So one of the mothers calls another one of the mothers, and they said, "Hey, have you seen Jack? Have you seen Jackie? Have you seen Bill?" And they're all like, "No, none of them have come home." And they knew there was a major problem at 3 a.m. because they should have all been home by now. And then they knew definitely something had gone wrong when it was the next morning on Saturday, the 25th, when these guys were supposed to meet up to go play in their big game for the Special Olympics. That was going to be in Sacramento, about 30 minutes away from Yuba City, and nobody showed up to meet up to go to that game. So they knew at that point something's definitely wrong. Police were called at that point. The search was on, and it was that following Sunday night. I think it was February 26, 1978. The Jack Madruga's car was found way up the Oroville-Quincy Highway in the Plumas National Forest. And this is way off course from leaving Chico, where they were viewing the game. It was, 2 hours off course in a complete opposite direction that they should have been. And they didn't fully realize the car wasn't. They saw the car, I think, Sunday night, and then they knew for sure the next day on that Monday, I think it was the 27th, where they confirmed that was indeed Jack Madruga's car. And, of course, none of the guys were in the car. The car was, they determined that it was snuck in the snow, but it wasn't bad. Like 5 grown guys could have easily have pushed it out. And no one had any clue why that car would have been so far up the Oroville-Quincy Highway at an elevation of 5,500 feet. And, they were just high up into the mountains at this point, and there was no reason. They didn't know anybody up there. They were all excited about playing this basketball game that morning. There's no rhyme or reason that car would have been up that mountain. And of course, there's no sign of them anywhere. They searched the entire area around the car. It was found at a place called Rogers Cow Camp. Nothing, no clothes, nothing. The keys were not in the car when they found it, but the window was rolled down, which was highly unusual.
That's weird
For Jack Madruga, because that car was his baby. He would have never left it unlocked. He would have never left a window rolled down in any condition ever. So that was really strange. So the search was on, and of course, all this bad weather had come in after that day. The snow was getting really thick, and the searching was difficult. Even on snowmobiles, they had dogs out looking. Not a trace of these guys were found. Nothing, and they didn't know what to do. They brought a psychic in. The psychic couldn't figure it out. She had this visions of an address and a house, and the police took everything seriously. Went and checked an address that matched up with the numbers that the psychic came up with. And of course, that was a dead end. And the sighting came up from this guy named Joseph Shones. And this guy, unfortunately, turned out to be the town drunk from a place called Berry Creek, which was right side of Oroville, California, about 30 or 40 minutes away from where the car was found up this mountain road. And he came forward. We don't know exactly when, but it was a few weeks after they had gone missing. And he said that he was up that road where the car was, and that he was in his VW Bug, and he had gone up there to check a little cabin that he had, because he was going to take his wife and daughter up for a ski trip the next day. So he wanted to go check the snow line or something. And so he went up there in his VW Bug, and he got stuck in his car up there near the Rogers Cow Camp where Madruga's car was found, and he suffers a mild heart attack. And this is earlier in the evening on February 24th, the same day the boys went missing, and he had stopped at a place called the Mountain House Lodge on the way up, and people actually remembered him being there. So he was in the area, and that's important. So he leaves the Mountain House Lodge around 6:30 p.m. that afternoon, and he drives further up the Oroville Quincy Highway, further up the mountain in the Plumas National Forest. And so as his story goes, his VW Bug gets stuck in the snow, and he gets out of his Bug to get it unstuck. And in doing so, he suffers a mild heart attack, and he's in pain from the heart attack. So he gets back into his car to stay warm, because it's freezing, of course. And so he's in his car, the heat's supposedly still on, and then at some point he's in pain and he drifts off to sleep, and he remembers it sometime around midnight that same night on that Friday, now early Saturday morning. And he's awakened somehow, and he sees this headlights come up behind his car, and they come up about 3 or 4 car lengths behind him, and he sees the car stop, and figures get out, and he can kind of see the silhouettes against the headlights of the car behind him, and he sees what he thinks are like 5 men and a woman holding a baby. And his story changes quite a bit, so it's kind of hard to follow. But that's his story. He saw these people, so he gets out of his little VW Bug, and he's calling for help, like help! I've had a heart attack. I need to go to the hospital. And he said nobody respond, and he's saying it loud enough that he knows they can hear him. And he says nothing happened. They just didn't respond. So all of a sudden the headlights got turned off, and he can't hear any voices anymore, and they're just gone. And he's like, remembers being angry, like, why wouldn't these people come help me? So he gets back into his VW Bug for the heat, and what he estimates to be another 3 or 4 hours or so, he's not sure. He sees he's awoken again. I don't know if it's noises or not, but he remembers becoming awake again, and he sees flashlight beams flashing around behind him, and then he sees another car behind him again, and he doesn't know if this is the same group of people or not. And he remembers figures getting out again, walking around the car, and he gets out and again says, hey, help me, I've had a heart attack, please get me some help. And again, nothing. No one responds to him. The beams get turned off, the flashlights, and they get back in the car. He doesn't see it leave, but the headlights go out, and nothing. So goes back into his car. He eventually runs out of gas somewhere really early morning. So there's no more heat, so he decides to get out of his VW Bug. He starts walking back down that road, and he claims he walks right past Jack Madruga's 1969 Mercury Montego. The window is down. He said he peers into the car. He doesn't see any car keys. So he doesn't think much of it. He just, because people would just leave their cars abandoned up there, for different reasons,
Right. So Drew, is this an isolated road, or is this right off the main highway? Okay.
It's pretty isolated. It's off the main highway, but it's people don't travel up that far up that highway.
Right,
It's called the Oroville Quincy Highway, but you're really getting high up into the mountains at that point. Like I said, they're at a 5,000-foot elevation, so it's extremely cold. Nothing around, not many cars going by at all, but people would get stuck up there and just leave their cars. So he didn't think much of it. So he walks past the Montego, makes note of it, and he walks about 5 miles back down the hill, so to speak, to the Mountain House Lodge. And there he tells them, I've had a heart attack. He doesn't mention anything about the car. And, his story changed a couple of times. He said they took him back home to Berry Creek, and his wife then took him to the hospital. Another account says somebody there took him to the hospital, where it was later confirmed he did suffer some form of a mild heart attack, but it's impossible to really pinpoint when he had it exactly.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know. I mean, that's one good thing about the podcast. I mean, they're so good. They probably even tracked that down.
Right.
But it's a record reflected. I think there was a record of that heart attack. So that's really the only credible sighting of these guys that happens the whole time.
Yeah, just to say on the heart attack, it's basically you're looking for cardiac enzymes.
Which they
and those can last
did.
a few days. So you're right; it's hard to pinpoint, but you can tell someone had a heart attack.
Yeah, so that was his story, and there was an account of somebody seeing him at Mountain House that day, and remembered seeing his car leaving the parking lot and going that direction, meaning up the mountain into the Plumas, which is important to be able to put him there. Right. And so apparently he was up there at the time of this sighting, but no one, like I said, he turned out to be, the town BS artist. This guy would double down on lies. He would tell people he was in the military in combat to guys that were in combat in the military and they knew better, but he would just double down on it, like, no, I was there. This kind of gun. They're like, that kind of gun didn't exist. And he'd just like, yeah, it did. You just never heard of it. This kind of guy, yeah, he would just keep going. You could never catch him in a lie. He would just keep doubling up on it till you just gave up, which that's, the way he was explained to me. So unfortunately, he's not the most credible guy. And he's the only real witness to this disappearance. So It's highly frustrating.
It was the neighbor you talked to, right?
Yeah, I talked to his neighbor. He lived next door to a family, and the guy I talked to was the cousin of the guy that lived there. So he lived with his cousin and his cousin family for a couple of years, and it was during that time. So he remembered him well. And he knew him well, and just said that one time he came out, shot a shotgun or indiscriminately firing one day, and it wasn't too far off from hitting one of his cousin's children, So the guy was really, really kind of crazy and irresponsible. But then again, a lot of them didn't take him that seriously either. He was kind of a, blowhard, kind of careless guy, but they didn't really fear him either. He was still kind of harmless on some level. So he's really
you think
tricky.
The police took him serious when he gave his report?
A lot of them were skeptical. A lot of them were skeptical of him. I think they took him seriously, yes, because they wanted to desperately find out what happened to these guys. They were on they took the psychics very seriously. Right, so they did. They took him seriously, but a lot of the law enforcement were highly skeptical of his claims and how much of it was true and how much it wasn't. They definitely questioned how much of the story was true and how much was false. So that's the only material witness. So of course, all the searching turns up nothing. And I mean, we're talking about heavy snowfall in that area, high elevation, and nothing is found at all of these guys. We're talking February 24th, and not anything was found until early June of the same year. So quite a few weeks later, a group of motorcyclists are just having a recreational ride through the Plumas National Forest, and they stop at this certain place and they get out, and one of the motorcycle riders immediately smells this putrid, pungent smell, and he's thinking, yeah, something is dead around here. So he's thinking there's got to be a large animal around, like it's so strong, like we're just looking for a dead bear or something. And he takes his motorcycle helmet off, and it really hits him how strong it is. And he determines that it's emanating from this U.S. Forest Service trailer that's not being inhabited at this point. This one was pretty remote. It was in a place called the Daniel Zink Campground. And, it was so remote that it was only manned when they needed it for, forest fires and stuff. It wasn't one of the perpetually manned Forest Service stations. It was just one that they used when they needed it, kind of deals. And so he walks towards the trailer and he notices there's a window broken out on this trailer, and he manages to get inside. The door is unlocked. He just walks straight into the trailer, and that smell is so bad it almost knocks him down. And he walks to the end of this hallway. There's a little bedroom in the trailer, and Ted Weir, one of the Yuba County 5 guys, is the oldest one. He was 32 at the time. He's deceased, laying on a bed. He's got 8 bed sheets pulled up perfectly up under his neck, like someone had been taking care of him. His bare feet are sticking out. He's missing 3 toes at least. He's got horrible gangrene in his feet from the frostbite. And I think Ted Weir, at the time he went missing, he was about 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. And when they found him, he was around 120 pounds. He lost 80 pounds. Basically, he starved to death. And but it looked like someone had been taking care of him. They found at least 8 C rations that were open, because there was enough food in the trailer surrounding it that there would have been enough for all 5 of those guys to live a year. There was enough C rations for all 5 of them to live for a year. There was a ton of food, and at least two of the cans of food that were open were done using a P38 can opener, and only somebody in the military would have known how to use one of those. Gary had been in the Army, and so had Jack Madruga. He actually had been in Vietnam. He didn't see combat, but he was a truck driver. But he, made it, got into the Army and made it all the way over to Vietnam, even being kind of slow. So they surmised that obviously one of those 2 had to be there, because they were the only 2 that would have known how to use that particular type of can opener.
Right.
And then some of the other food was opened with a knife, but they think these guys just felt guilty for taking the food, like they were stealing. So they didn't really use a whole lot of food. And then the whole mystery kicked in when they found Ted Weir's body, because now they know, okay, we found one of these guys, right? So they immediately start searching the area around this Forest Service trailer. And in the next 2 days, they found 3 more bodies, being Jackie Hewitt, Bill Sterling, and Jack Madruga. They found all their remains, and animals had already gotten to them. They all died of, they can just assume it was hypothermia because it was so cold, and they were wearing street clothes that night. So they found, obviously Ted Weir's body, and then they found the remains of 3 other guys. Gary Mathias was never found. They still, to this day, he has not been found. His remains have never been found. It's just speculated maybe he got further out from the trailer and made it far enough to where he was never found. There's been a lot of forest fires since, so a lot of people believe he just got further away where his remains were never found. But so now we know what happened to at least 4 of the guys. And police believe that Gary made it to the trailer. Obviously Ted Weir made it to the trailer, and someone was carrying for him, most likely Gary Mathias. They think Jackie Hewitt made it to the trailer. I don't know why, because they didn't even fingerprint it as far as it could ever be, could be told. And they think that Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling both died of hypothermia before they even made it to the trailer. So they don't think those 2 guys ever even made it there.
That's strange, though, that they didn't. I mean, did they? Because they didn't fingerprint the car either, did they? Or now?
No, I think they did, but it's not really clear. Hopefully it'll be more clear on the podcast. But I think they did, and they didn't find any prints that belong to someone that shouldn't have been there. But I think it's really murky as far as any fingerprinting went in this entire case, the trailer or the car. Very murky, murky, the reports on it, and if there was anything definitive. So just not much came out of it at all.
Wow. So there's been a lot of speculation about Gary maybe possibly having something to do with this. What's your thoughts on that?
I've always leaned against it. I've always leaned against it, mainly because Gary was, he wanted to play in that game as bad as the rest of those guys that next day. There's just no reason that he would have just flipped out of nowhere. The kind of medicine that he was on for the antipsychotic stuff takes a little time to wear off. It's not just like you miss a dose and then you have an episode. It would take a week or so at least to start really where it would wear off to the point to where he could just start having a break or just something out of the blue happening. So it's just unlikely that Gary would have just, want to just decide all of a sudden to turn on his friends. I mean, looking forward to that game. It would have, you know, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just unlikely. And I just lean against that. There's so many theories of what could have happened, but I just don't think Gary just deciding to flip out basically, or just, you know, wanted to see the demise of his four friends. Like I said, somebody was taking care of Ted Weir all that time. I don't think Jackie Hewitt could have quite done it. You know, just given his own mental, you know, disability. It more looks like that Gary was probably taking care of Ted Weir, because they surmised that Ted Weir lived for at least 8 to 10 weeks after he made it to that trailer, and they based that off of his beard growth. You know, like I said, he lost 80 pounds. He starved to death, but he was alive for at least 8 weeks, you know, after he made it to that trailer. So somebody was caring for him to some degree. And it just makes more sense to me that it was most likely Gary and Mathias. And they did find Gary's tennis shoes in that trailer, and Ted's shoes were missing. So what they believed happened was that Gary swapped shoes with Ted, because Ted had bigger feet, wore a sturdier leather shoe, and that Gary put on those thicker leather shoes to kind of head out into the you know,
more
the
protective
vast,
for him.
more protective of his feet, and allow him to get a little further out, you know, and try to make it out of there.
Yeah, the thing is that the crazy thing is that cabin was filled with lots of food, like you said.
Food everywhere. Propane.
Everywhere.
There was propane for heat. You know, Gary probably could have figured that out, because, you know, he was like anybody else when he was on his medicine. He wasn't, you know, he could think like anyone else. So maybe they missed where you could have turned on the propane. I get that. But in the trailer, there was lots of paperback books, lots of kindling. There was matches.
Yeah.
And no one ever tried to start a fire. There was not any evidence of any fire ever being started, which is the most baffling thing of all, because Gary would have absolutely known how to start a fire. Possibly Jack Madruga would have, but we don't think he ever made it to the trailer, so it wouldn't have mattered. But Gary would have absolutely known how to start a fire. I mean, been in the military. He was like anybody else. He was freezing too. I mean, just your natural inclination would be to keep warm, and you have paperback books. You've got paper towels. You got matchbooks that were there. Plenty of things to start a fire. So it was almost like they were afraid to call attention to themselves.
Now, how many MREs were eaten?
I think 8. No,
8.
I think, no, sorry. I think maybe, I can't remember, maybe 12 or 13. Not a lot. There wasn't a lot. And there was a lot there. They definitely found them.
Yeah, we got 5 boys and only 8 MREs.
Yeah, not much at all. Not much food was consumed. And I think 3 were open with that P-38.
And so which did he die from starvation, or was it frostbite? I mean, was it starvation?
You know, I don't know if it was conclusive. It wasn't hypothermia, but you know, he was in the trailer. Obviously it was cold. There was a broken window, but he basically starved to death. You know, it was basically starvation. I mean, yeah, he had gangrene and everything on his feet, but he basically starved to death.
Yeah, and he went 8 to
10 weeks.
8 to 10
he lived
weeks.
for 8 to 10 weeks in that trailer.
So I can tell you right now, someone, like you said, had to have been taking care of him.
Somebody was taking care of him.
Think about the water. You can't go without water.
The water is a good point. Yeah, the water's more important than food.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I had that discussion recently with Tony Doug Wright, and we were kind of talking about the water. I don't know exactly what they found in there as far as, you know, with their bottled water. I'm sure there was, because it was fully stocked. I mean, they had plenty. There was enough food for all 5 of them for a year, so you can assume that there was enough water, because this was the U.S. Forest Service. They're not going to go light on any of that. There would have been plenty of water stored around there, and I don't know if what they found as far as how much water was consumed, but you have to know there was water there that was drinkable.
Yeah. So is there something you were saying?
Well, one thing that stood out to me earlier was, you know, the Sierra Nevada like mountain range. Although it's like really daunting, right? The terrain and stuff. I'm sure that they have a great group of searchers. I'm sure that's like not their first rodeo trying to go find somebody. So I was just curious about like more of the search that happened when they found the car, because you said they brought dogs, right?
Yeah, they brought dogs. They had snowmobiles, and that's a huge question that comes up on this case, because understanding the layout and the true distance. When this case was first reported, all in the newspaper articles back from 1978 would say the car was found at Rogers Cow Camp, and that Ted's body was found at the Daniel Zink campground. And everything you read about this case said that those were about 19 miles away. and that's not true. It's the crow flies. It was really about 5 miles as the crow flies, but those guys couldn't go. You'd have to kind of go over
That's
a mountain
straight.
range.
You're talking about a straight shot.
A straight shot by the air, yeah, which obviously they couldn't do.
Right.
So granted, but even taking that off the table, if they made their way around the road, you're still talking about 11, 12 miles, which is still a good distance.
That's
but the problem with that is they should not have missed that trailer with the way that they were searching, and that trailer only being that far away. We can say as the crow flies, because they have helicopters too.
Yeah, that's
they would have saw it from the air.
They would have saw it from the air.
Definitely wasn't the first
people
saw it,
and they missed it. They missed it,
Yeah,
and that's a huge tragedy.
That's
It
what I
should
was
not have
curious
missed it.
about, because it's not like somewhere maybe out here, right, where you don't have very many people missing. I'm sure it happens more often up there, so therefore
all the time.
They would be more acute to search and find people and rescue people, right?
Right.
So that's why I was confused. I was like,
They missed it.
Yeah, they just missed it.
Yeah,
So
they missed it. That's a big criticism that they owned. They should not have missed it.
Was the trailer something that the Rangers use often, or I mean,
not from what I understand. This one was used just as needed. Like maybe if there was a
record.
fire out that way.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is right the day before, I think it was on February 23rd, which was a Thursday, a snowcat vehicle went up there to the trailer to take the snow off of the roof so it wouldn't collapse. And they surmised that the boys saw the path, made by that snowcat winding around the mountains, kind of taking the line of the road, which would have been, 12 miles away or so. But the boys found that path, and they just thought, okay, it's the around the corner syndrome. Like, here's this clear path. It must go somewhere. And they just kept going and going and going till, 3 to 6 foot snow drifts and street close at night.
Right.
And they just kept going. And then, 2 of them didn't make it. 3 of them did. And, that's just maybe it could have been a huge part of the tragedy, is that they saw that path left by that snowcat, and they just kept thinking it would lead to something, which it did, but they probably had no idea how far it was.
And didn't later one of the dads found his son's body like in a jacket? I guess he pulled a jacket up and the spine fell out.
Yeah, that was Jackie Hewitt.
Was that, and that was close to the trailer, was it not?
It was pretty close. It was about 2 miles. I mean, the accounts vary, and it was by the road. And, I think they found Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga a little closer together, because I think Jackie Hewitt made it to the trailer, and then at some point he struck out to try to make it. But I don't think it's definitive if Jackie made it to the trailer or not. I think that was just what the police believed for whatever reason, that those 3 made it and the other 2 died of hypothermia before they got there. But yeah, that was Jackie Hewitt. It was really just tragic. The same thing happened with Bill Sterling's father. He wanted to go search, when they knew they found Ted, the other family members found out, and they wanted to go search for their loved ones, of course. And the police would try to tell them, no, you don't want to do that. It's going to be terrible for you to do that. And you couldn't stop them, so they let him come on that search. And Bill Sterling, his father, went up there with a friend, and one of the searchers found his son's remains and said something like, sir, I think we found the body. And they're like, how do you know? And they said, well, we found his wallet, sir. It has his social security card in it and a picture of the twins. And he had 2 younger twin sisters. So they knew that they had found the remains of Bill Sterling. And his father, there's a photograph in the book where his father's being consoled by his friend. He literally fell to the ground weeping. He was just so overcome with grief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so tragic. You can't even wrap your mind around it.
So was the snow so heavy that, was there any tracks left by the boys from the car, like where they could have kind of followed them, or was it so heavy of snow that
too heavy? Yeah, there was no tracks left at all. They did seem to search pretty long and hard. They just did not ever see that trailer. I don't know why they, it wasn't that far away, at least, by the air, 5 miles. You think they would have seen this, remote trailer and at least bother to go look.
That makes absolutely no sense.
They just blew it. I mean, you're talking about different jurisdictions and stuff, but
for sure,
still, there's no excuse, because they were all involved. I mean, we're talking a multi-county effort with all the different police departments involved looking for these guys. I mean, it was well publicized too, and no one thought to check the trailer. Maybe
one of the pods, called, said, "Hey, there's something down here," and they go, "Oh, that's the Rangers." And then they automatically thought, "Oh, okay, well, the Rangers are there, so no need to." I bet that had to happen, because you could not have missed that.
They got their wires crossed, or somebody thought it got checked. I've never seen a report of that, but there's a lot of criticism, and there should be. They shouldn't have missed it.
Yep.
They
Oh,
should.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
no
because
reason to miss
They
it.
knew it was there enough to go clean the roof, so it didn't
Yeah,
collapse,
they knew it.
you know?
Yeah, you think
So
they
there
might
was
have
a
seen the
right-
path
Good point.
themselves. You
Right,
think they
yeah.
could have found that snowcat path? I know it snowed pretty heavily after that Saturday, and now we're talking about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it probably started going away quite a bit. But for them to have known it, and did they even communicate with the U.S. Forest Service?
That's
I
right.
mean, they would have
Yeah.
said, "We have a
Yeah.
trailer up there. We had a snowcat go up that way. Maybe we should check just to be sure." And they didn't do it.
Well,
It's
you've
tragic
seen
they didn't
God.
check
You've
it.
seen it. You've seen it in other cases, though. It could have been one of those situations where, again, this is 1978, so times are different. But they probably didn't assume that the kids just got out and started walking into the forest.
That's
So
true.
they may have just approached it from a completely different angle. Like,
That-
well, why the hell would these kids? This obviously is a crime scene, not a missing person scene, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point, because naturally, when you're up the mountain like that, everyone's natural inclination, if you're lost or whatever, is to go downhill, not uphill.
Right.
So
yeah.
they knew that. So that's true. What you're saying is a good point, because they would have. It's really unnatural, even for people with learning disabilities or whatever, and that's kind of what they got termed as. I mean, back then they just called it mildly retarded.
Right.
Was unfortunately the only term there was. So they just thought these just retarded guys just got lost, and they were
Yeah.
went uphill instead of downhill like normal people would do. But that's not really true. When you meet the family members and talk to them, these guys absolutely would have known when they were lost. Jack
Yep.
Madruga would have absolutely known how to turn that car around. He had a driver's license. He knew how to drive. I've seen some other podcasts and stuff on this case. They would say, well, the road was probably just too narrow for them to turn the car around, so they just kept going. That's not true. There was plenty of places on that road at that time of year to simply turn that car around and go back down the hill. Those guys were scared. They were scared.
If you're freezing to death, you'll find a way to get that car back down that hill, right?
Yeah, and the car was in perfect running order when they found it. It had a quarter tank of gas in it. The police hotwired it because they didn't have the keys. The keys were found on Madruga's body. He was actually still clutching them in his left hand. His right arm was already gone. The animals had already run off with it.
Oh my God.
But he was clutching he was clutching his wristwatch in his left hand. But they did find the keys in his pocket from the parts of his body that hadn't already been dragged away by animals.
And that brings up
he had the keys with him.
That brings up a point that they found a wristwatch, correct, in the trailer.
They found a gold Wathman wristwatch next to Ted Weir, next to his body. The crystal was missing, and they never determined who owned that watch. They never determined it. All the family said it was not, one of their sons. So nobody in the five claimed the watch to ever have owned it. They don't know whose watch that was.
So going back to the Bears market, I mean, this is where things had to went sour at
Maybe.
some point. Well, maybe. Right. I mean, is there a chance that they could have just took the wrong turn? Could they have, weren't they, is it 70 miles off course where they found?
Yeah. So about 70 miles off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so they don't know. They think that there is a turn that's kind of, hard to miss, but they've done this trip before.
But it's snowing heavy.
It's not not really, not
Really?
until they get up that road. Not really,
Okay.
not until they get up that road. It's not,
Because
weather's
they
not
hit
that
the
bad until they
elevation.
get lost.
Right.
Until they got up to that elevation, it really wasn't snowing, till they went past Oroville. And I know one thing, and this will probably be talked about on the podcast, and I know a guy that researched it really heavily and was driven up there by the police. He said you can't really miss going over the Oroville Bridge, where the town of Oroville is.
Mhm.
And they would have had to have gone over that bridge to have got on up the Oroville Quincy Highway into the Plumas. And you would have absolutely known at that point that you're on that bridge, that you're lost, because they know that wasn't part of their trip. So if you're on that bridge, you would think, okay, we're definitely lost, guys.
Right.
As soon as we get off this bridge, we're going to turn around and go back the right direction. And that didn't happen. They kept going in the wrong direction.
And then there was talk also about one of the kids had a friend that lived in the area where they found the car, that maybe they were going to go visit him.
Well, they think they thought they may have gone to a place called Forbstown.
I can't see that because they knew they had a game the next day.
Yeah, had a game the next day, so it didn't make sense. Gary had some friends in a little town called Forbstown, and what they surmised is maybe Gary decided to go visit these friends, even though he's with his other 4 friends, and they have a big game the next morning early. And that Gary gets this wild hair to go visit these buddies in Forbstown, and they think that maybe they just missed the turn going to Forbstown. But they tracked down those friends, and those friends said that they hadn't seen Gary in well over a year. I think maybe even 2 years. So these are guys he wasn't even in any regular contact with. And I guess the police vetted that out. So it would have made no sense. It made no sense for them to do it.
Some of the boys had their uniforms laid out.
Yeah,
the
they
night
had 'em laid
before.
out, ready to go. They're excited
Shoes
about
ready.
the next day.
Yeah,
Told their moms not to let them oversleep.
right. Yeah,
You know, in 3 of the cases, I think they all said, "Mom, don't let me oversleep. I'm not, you know, I can't be late." I mean, they were that excited. And Gary was one of them. He told his mom, "Don't let me oversleep."
it's so baffling because like even in modern times, like today, to drive 70 miles out of the way without GPS, you would be like, hey, maybe I should just stop, right? And now think about
Or ask
1978.
directions or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And think about 1978, traveling 70 miles would take 4 times as long. And for them to never stop is just completely baffling. And they had gas, right?
They had gas. When they found the car, it still had a quarter of a tank in it. That quarter of a tank would have gotten them home. If they,
Whoa.
you know, went back down the, you know, the road to the right, you know, direction, they had enough gas to get home. And the car started right up. It was barely stuck in the snow. It wasn't to the point that 5 grown men couldn't have easily have pushed it out. You know, then you get into theories. Why did these guys wind up there? Did they just take a wrong turn and get lost? And they were just a bunch of retarded boys that didn't know any better. And that's just not, that doesn't pan out. You know, because Druga was, you know, his family didn't describe him as really that slow. He's just kind of really shy. You know, he had a driver's license. He graduated from high school. He went to Vietnam. You know, if he was that bad off, they wouldn't have taken him into the army.
Yeah, for sure.
So he wasn't that bad. He absolutely, you know, I talked to his cousin who had driven that car, George Madruga, and said, man, my uncle knew how to drive. He's like, he was very protective of the car, but he said he knew how to turn around. He knew when he was lost. You know, this isn't just some dummy that's like, oh, well, the car doesn't run. I'm going to run up a mountain. No, something scared them. Some unknown compelling force, as I called it, scared the hell out of those guys and made them go up that hill in 3 to 6 foot snow drifts and street clothes and not turn back. It's fear. It had something scared them. You know, Gary didn't scare easy either. Gary did not scare easy. Gary was a barroom brawler. Could handle himself, and you know he would have fought. Scare easy. He would have fought. Oh yeah, he would have fought and defended those guys, and he didn't scare easy. You know, even at the point of a gun,
there was no sign of a struggle or anything.
No signs of a struggle. You know, they said they found some shell casings around where the car was found. But up in that area, that's not that unusual. I mean, everybody had a shotgun or a handgun.
Well, nobody had bullet wounds, right? That we know of.
No bullet wounds.
Right.
Yeah, they never found anything on the bones or anything like that. Obviously not on Ted. Nothing like that. So
even if you think about, okay, let's say there was foul play, and there had to been, but even say someone's going to rob them or whatever, they got to be thinking about their lives. How treacherous this is. I'm going to march these boys all, 8 or 9 miles would be dangerous for them as well.
Yeah. It's extremely dangerous. And then you have the strange story of Joe Shones, which doesn't add up, but he was in the area. That's what's strange. And he had no reason to be up there. Him in a snow weekend with his wife and daughter is laughable to anyone that knew him. You know, it's just he didn't do things like that. I mean, he didn't even get along with his wife and daughter. I mean, he's looking to get away from them. Yeah,
from reading your book, it
he owned no property up there.
Yeah, and it sounded like to me from reading your book, he liked to just drink beer and stay away from the wife.
That's it.
It could have possibly been an affair. Maybe he's meeting another girl.
It could be. You know, he was just a bad town drunk, mean. He would get his, he'd often get his car stuck. So that part of the story is very believable. And people would get him unstuck, and then he wouldn't even wave at him or thank him. He would just, as soon as he started unstuck, he'd just zoom away.
He's that guy.
Just a total jerk. He's
that guy.
Yeah, just a total jerk. And that's how he came off to everybody. So why would he come out of his own, sweet notions to come forward and say he even saw these guys? Because he's not this loving guy. I think he knew something, and maybe he was worried, because of course nobody had been found by that point, but maybe he's afraid they survived. I mean, I don't know what caused him to come forward. I don't.
So what about someone put Bigfoot down there?
Well, I mean,
that's talked about.
It has a lot of Daltov Pass.
Yeah, it does. It
is. That's why they call it the American Diatlov Pass incident. I mean, yeah, that's what they call the case. They call it the American Diatlov Pass because you got a group of multiple people going missing in the mountains. I think they both happened in February. I think Diatlov Pass was also in February. Of course, that was 1959. This was 78. But there's a lot of comparisons.
Yeah, in your book also you said that there was a possible argument about them being not Chico fan, or they're on Chico's turf or whatever, and
Chico
that a
State.
fight may have started, and this is the red truck gets involved in this situation. Is that
Yeah, the red truck comes in from another sighting that a lady said that she had in a place called Brownsville, California, which
how
wasn't
far is
that
that?
close. It was about 45 minutes or an hour away in a different area. It was more to the east of that place. And she said she saw the boys in a red truck pull up, and it was all five of them. Two of them were using the payphone. The other three went inside a convenience store and got food, and were eating a bunch of food, which is like them. That sounds like any five grown
Yeah.
friends, but it didn't make sense. She said Jackie Hewitt was the one on the phone, which is highly unusual because Jackie Hewitt, he could use a phone, but he didn't like to. So if he could ever had, if he was around one of his friends, he'd have them make the call for him because he just felt awkward using a phone. So,
Right.
So her story didn't really add up. And then there was a bunch of reward flyers out at the time she had that sighting. So, of course, the police investigated this sighting and took it seriously, but they deemed that there's just no way it was them. I mean, it was too far away. And the main thing was they weren't with Jack Madruga's car. They were in a red truck. They don't know who owned a red truck.
Right, and this developed into Joseph Shones' story, didn't it? Like he said,
That
then all of a
developed into
sudden,
Shones' story.
all of a sudden he saw a red truck.
Yeah. Now on a
Uh,
second sighting, I think he said that, car pulls up behind him and then he saw a red truck behind that car. And I think he probably just amended the story when he heard about the red truck to make it more
Sure.
believable. So I don't think he ever saw any car behind him personally, but I think he
Right.
was up there. I think he was
Yeah,
up there.
'cause
I think he
that's
probably did
yeah.
see something and he might have been involved. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, we talked about it like in the Delphi case, the possibility of all these strange occurrences happening at one time in
Yeah,
this
it's
one
weird.
weird place, right?
But figuring out a motive is what's strange. I mean,
Yeah.
That is
The motive's
that's
difficult.
there's no motive. I mean, the kids probably didn't have much money on them at all, if any. I mean,
No.
I'm sure they had enough for the snacks and whatnot.
He said $10 allowance. He stopped by and
Yeah.
got that $10 allowance at the beginning.
I got ripped off. I used
Yeah.
to get $1.75
Yeah,
back in the
yeah.
70s for that was my allowance a week.
Yeah. You didn't do too bad.
But
But there's theories. I mean, one of them is maybe they got followed after the game. I don't think it was any animosity over that game. Like I said,
Yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
right.
it was for
And you said a lot of people weren't at the game. It's not
wasn't
like it was
well
a,
attended. Yeah, I mean,
That's a
I
big
don't
school
even think
playing
it was,
against a
maybe
small school.
100 people or 150, not many
Yeah.
at all. It wasn't this crowded, packed, big.
not like it's the
lots of-
Lakers.
That's
or-
like that's like
Well, even
OU
for a
playing
college game,
North
even-
Dallas
yeah.
University.
Yeah, even for a college game,
Yeah.
it wasn't well, it wasn't that well attended even for a college game because it was a lopsided game. They pretty much knew who was going to win. There was nothing on the line at all for either team, really. So a guy that wrote for the local newspaper there in Chico would remember seeing the guys, and he said that he didn't remember anything going on, like any taunting or anything like that. And there was rumors that a fight started in the parking lot at Bears Market, but the lady that worked the store never saw that. Could
Right.
they have been followed from the game? Maybe chased from the game. But what's weird is
Still.
when the cops found the
Yeah.
car up there at Rogers Cow Camp and they towed it back to Oroville and they looked at the underbody of that heavy American car. We're talking a heavy two-door American car with 5 grown men in it. And they went up that rutted mountain road of the Oroville Quincy Highway, where it's really rutted that time of year. And they were stunned when they saw the underbody of that car because it was perfect. There was no
Yeah.
scratches on
somebody
it.
just dropped
It
it
wasn't
there?
rutted. Yeah, like it was just came off the assembly line. It was like perfect. They were like they couldn't believe it. Like this car made it all the way up that
Right.
far up the
Which
Oroville
begs
Quincy
the
Highway. There's no
question.
damage to it. But it tells me that he drove his own car up there because he babied that car. He would drive it in such a
Right.
way to not damage it, even if he didn't know that road. If he sees any kind of little pothole or something they could bottom out on, he would avoid it by all costs. So that tells me he drove his own car up there, and it also tells me that he's not
Intent.
running from somebody behind him.
Right. Well, it shows intent, right? Like his intentions were to go that way. Because if he really cared that much about the car, he
You're
wouldn't
right.
put it through
He
that.
would have
in the
turned.
first
He would have
place.
turned around earlier.
Right, unless it was something there for him to go to, right?
That's true.
Wow.
That's a good
God,
point because
Drew!
we're getting somewhere. He was known about that. Like if he was dropping off, his cousin told me this. One of the few people that ever drove his car was his cousin because they were closer in age. He said if he had to take a friend home, that lived down, further, their house was further down like a bad road or a washed out dirt road or whatever, he'd say, hey man, you got to walk it. He would stop it. He would.
Like
he
that,
would.
yeah.
That's how he was. He was so possessive of that car and wanted to keep it perfect. He'd say, hey, you're walking it. Like, here's a guy who's like, I'm not, hey, you're gonna make me walk half a mile back to my house. Yeah, I am.
I mean, even more to the point when we talk about intent, because that's a lot, we bring up that word a lot on our show, right? Is that not only is his intent not to mess up the bottom of his car, but the fact that it would take a lot of time to navigate your way up that road without messing up the car takes a long time, right?
A lot of effort.
At what point does somebody like, hey dude, we got a freaking game in the morning?
Yeah, like Gary would flip, like maybe Gary flipped out, like, dude, I can't stand this anymore. Like, that's why they thought, if after seeing that, the police, at that point, the police didn't know that how OCD the guy was about his car, so they just surmised that whoever did drive it up there must have known the road. And Jack Madruga did not know that road. But even if it was somebody that knew that road, let's say they took over his car, had said scoot over guys and put a gun on the rest of them, and I'm going to drive your car, and it was their intent to drive them up there and abandon them all up that mountain road. Even if it's somebody knew the road, they're not going to leave the car in that pristine condition with that heavy muffler and 5 grown men in it like that. It's bottoming out. And so he had to have driven his own car up there and took that kind of care. And like you said, good point, that he had to have wanted to go up there, because in these other cases he wouldn't even risk it. So why is he risking it unless he thought he was helping something? Because they would definitely help people if they were in need. So maybe they encountered Joe Shones further down the road somewhere, and he says, hey, and he gets in their car and he says, hey, I live that farther up the mountain for whatever crazy reason, and my heart medicine's up there, and they just said, okay, we got to help this guy out. So he's under pressure, but he's still gingerly driving the car up there. It's got to be something like that.
Even that in that scenario, it's weird that they even are up there enough to meet this guy. Right.
Yeah, but
they're so far off the path.
Yeah, they're so far off.
But he's up there though.
He is up there.
That's what's weird. He's up there and he has no reason to be.
Right.
He's way up, he's way too far away from where he lives in Berry Creek. His family was still I think wife and daughter weren't even in Berry Creek then. They were back in Sacramento. But he has no property that far up the Orville Quincy Highway near Rogers Cow Camp. He does not own a thing over there. There's no reason for him to be that far up the mountain. None. He has no business being up that way, and he knows the area. He lives in the general area. He knows it. So why is he up there at all?
And you see people get caught like that for crimes all the time, where like they're afraid that they've been seen somewhere, and so they want to come forward with information.
Good point. I think that's what he was doing.
They preemptively want to come up with, oh yeah, in case you see me there or my DNA's there, I was licking your stamps. So like
I know how that works.
Right. Yeah. I know you do.
It's a Don Cheney special.
It is a Don Cheney special.
That's it. I mean, like, he's covering himself. I mean, why was he? I mean, he knows he's up there. He probably remembers someone at the mountain house saw him leave that direction. So he's probably thinking, who else might have seen him? And I think there is a credible account of whoever, or maybe he went back with his wife or somebody to get his car back, because his car's still stuck up there. Another thing that doesn't float with his story is he's driving a VW Bug, which is an air-cooled engine. It doesn't really provide heat when it's not running, unless you have an aftermarket heater put in. So, his whole story doesn't wash.
Man,
this is crazy.
Because
even if someone,
why would they get out of the car though? You know what I mean?
Well, not only that, I mean, even if someone did say, move over with a gun or something, I'm taking your car,
they still watch
and they drive up to a very dangerous area,
and then what? But they still get out.
But then they're in danger as well. I'm like what I was saying earlier. Is like there's just no motive.
Did you say the window was rolled down?
The window was rolled down, which was highly. I really.
That's a weird.
I'm hyper focused on that. I'm hyper focused on that window because he would have never left that car with that window down. Well, none of them smoked that I know of.
No, I'm just saying.
Gary may have
almost like hey, they came across something that they needed to like communicate with, and then
or somebody said, "Hey," or got out of another car and said, "Roll your window down."
Roll your window down. Yeah.
That's what I think happened. But, as far as the window being down, because he would have never left that car with that window down. Never. Ever. And he did.
Right.
And he did, which tells you they're in fear. Right. They're in fear.
Yeah.
They're scared. They're scared of something to make it. I mean, they fled up that mountain. I mean, I don't think they gingerly walked
Yeah.
freezing
Right.
to death. I think they fled. I mean, maybe you're running.
They had to, because I mean, think about how far they went when they could have came back down toward
the
the
doors
car.
are
Yeah,
shut.
like
doors
they're
are shut.
committed. They're committed. Even when
Yes.
Yeah.
like they didn't even take the time to get out and look at the car. Like, okay, guys, we can push this out. They
Right,
didn't. They were in
right.
such whatever scared them so bad that they leave the window rolled down. Somebody said, "Hey, roll it down," and then that person scared them up the mountain or not. We don't know, but they scared them so much that
about
the
this?
window's down, and they didn't even try to push the car out
What
because they
about
could have
this?
pushed the car out and gone further up the
Absolutely.
mountain.
Okay, so two things. First thing is, it's in our last show with Carl Johnson, we talked about how fear can manifest itself, right? So like Drew, what we were talking about with him was when he was a kid, he would hear like what he found out later was a heater that would knock, like a radiator. But to him as a kid, it started to manifest itself as like a monster, right? And so maybe that is because I know when it gets cold, here's the other thing. When it gets cold, like in the morning when I'm taking my kids to school, if I can't see, I didn't take the time to preheat my car or whatever, you know, like I roll down my window to look out. So could they have manifested their own fear to see a creature that, because that's what I believe happened in like the Delta of Pass incident, because same thing.
Yeah, but you got
they
five,
cut themselves out of the tent from the inside.
One boy would have to convince all the other four.
Right.
There's a
Yeah,
monster
that's
out
what makes
there.
it hard on both
Right.
these cases. That's what's so fascinating is
Yeah,
you got
because
multiple
one-
people
it's
doing it.
like,
Right. And at some point,
Mass,
one of the
like
guys,
some kind
mass
of
hysteria. Right.
mass hysteria.
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
all
it's
five
like
of them
mass
are
hysteria.
believing that. Yeah, maybe it could have been a case of mass hysteria where
Right.
all five of these guys. And remember, Gary's not like the other four.
Right.
He's
So
different.
yeah.
But still, all five of them are doing it.
Didn't he kind of see himself as the person that kind of like looked over the group?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, he was. Yeah. He was kind of the protector. I mean,
right.
And I will say this: the other four were scared of him. I mean, naturally so. Those guys were different. They were kind of these fun, loving guys. There was that incident where Ted Weir's house was burning when he was younger, and his brother tried to wake him up, saying, "Hey, the house is on fire. We got to get out, Ted." And Ted said, "No, I can't. I got to go to work in the morning." He didn't understand mentally that he was going to die if he stayed in that house. That's how bad Ted was.
Right.
So these guys are different.
Right. Well, and a lot of times fear, like if all three of us were in an incident, right, like this, like a prolonged survival incident, like our fear could start to, rub off on each other too. So like if they looked at Gary as a person that protects them and all of a sudden Gary's scared, it becomes much easier for the other four to start freaking out, right?
It would have freaked them out big time, see fear in him.
Yeah, which would, in turn, it's like this kind of weird cyclical thing where all of a sudden as a leader, you start to see your guys freaking out. Right. I mean, I've been in situations like that where it's like, oh God, like now they're looking at me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm looking at them. And there's this compounding effect of, fear and danger. That's what it seems like. I mean, it's baffling. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. We got a question from Anna. Is there anything to connect the other guy, the one who drank beer and avoided his wife, with the men? Where was he the night before the incident?
That's interesting.
I don't know where he was the night before, but the night of the incident, at least early in the afternoon, he was at the Mountain House Lodge. That's a fact. They remember seeing him there. He was definitely there at Mountain House. And like I said, there's at least one witness that remembered him leaving and going up, up the mountain. So he was absolutely at the Mountain House on the afternoon of February 24th. So he's in the general area. So he is spotted there. So other than that, there's nothing to connect him. I can tell you that his daughter had a learning disability like the boys did. And we looked into that. Maybe he knew them from somewhere because his daughter had a learning disability. She was 18 at the time, his daughter. But we couldn't find anything.
Not too far off in age.
Yeah, not too far off. I mean, I think Gary was 24. So not real far off. And they would go to events for the handicap. People or learning disability. Yeah, there was dances for them in Sacramento and different things. So, we considered, I did. And then, Tony helped me look into it, but we never found any link with that. I just thought it was kind of an odd coincidence that his daughter has a learning disability like four of them did, but it didn't really go anywhere. We looked into it and thought there could be a connection.
That is a common denominator.
Maybe one of them knew the daughter and kind of like tried to date her and the father didn't like it. So he snapped when he recognized who it was. But we couldn't find any link there. I mean, it doesn't mean there isn't one. We just couldn't find one, and we looked pretty hard. Susie says, "Did they buy soda pop or alcohol at the store?" No, they didn't. Not alcohol. I think Gary was a drinker from time to time. The other four absolutely did not drink alcohol whatsoever. No, it was milk, and soft drinks. Nothing, nothing alcoholic was bought.
I thought that was kind of interesting too. The lady that came forward in the red truck, she claims that they came in and they bought a chocolate milk, a burrito, and a soda pop. And the place at the other store, so I didn't know, like, had information already started flying around by then, because I know at the other store the lady said they bought like ding dongs. And,
no, they bought like a Hostess cherry pie, a lemon pie,
Yeah,
chocolate milk.
Yeah,
So
they have a good list of what they bought. They knew exactly what they bought. One was a Langendorf lemon pie, which I don't see that brand. I don't even know if they make it anymore. I think it was a Langendorf.
That sounds amazing. Langendorf's
I think it was have you heard of that? Yeah.
Yes, I love Langendorf.
One of them was a Langendorf. Yeah. You know, they found the wrappers in the car. They found maps in the car. Nothing else though. Nothing of note. But they found maps that were still folded in the glove box. And
so the maps weren't open as if
maps
they were
not open
or anything.
Yeah,
like
they had
that.
a map of the area. They had a map of the California, and then they had, I think, Northern California, something that even had where they were, and it was still folded in the glove box.
You would have taken it if you.
Yeah, if you were lost, why would you get the maps out? If they had maps, they knew how to read them. And no one even bothered to open them. No one even opened them.
Nobody was chasing them either, like you said, because they would have, like,
the car would have been rutted, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, she talks about the oil pan right here.
Yeah.
It's a heavy American car with 5 guys in it. Right. You think you'd have a hard time not bottoming that out just on a regular flat road.
Right.
Much less that you know, that rutted. You know, there's different times a year that sometimes they would repair it to some good extent, but for the most part, and I think during that time of year, I talked to somebody that knew the road well and drove it a lot. Said, no, that road was in bad shape.
Well, you live in Texas. I live in Oklahoma, so we know about some shitty roads. So back roads.
That was one of them. I mean, up there. So it's one of those things. And then, you know, there's different theories out there.
What about the Gary sightings? What do you think about those?
Well, there's one main sighting of Gary, and that was from Jack Madruga's niece, who I talked to. It's a credible sighting. I mean, it's crazy, but I can tell you she believes it. I asked her point blank, you know, how certain are you that you saw Gary Mathias then? And she said about 99%. And that blew me away. This was okay. They went missing in February of 78. This would have been, it was after the bodies were found, which was June of 78. So this was more like September of 78. So it was a good amount of time after. And she was working at her parents' bar. It was called La Casa Blanca. And she went up to the front and looked at the bar, and lo and behold, Gary Mathias is sitting at the bar. And she's like, just can't believe it. She's like almost passed out. And she knew Gary well. So this isn't somebody she kind of casually knew that, you know, hung around her uncle. She knew him. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's Gary. And she went and got her mother, who was working there because they owned the establishment. She said, Mom, Gary Mathias is up front. And their mom's like, no way, you're crazy. And let's go see. And when they went up there, whoever they thought was Gary, you know, saw both of them looking at him, and he beat it out of there. So she immediately called the police and said, I saw Gary. And she was, you know, adamant about it. So what she said, which is interesting because I've never heard this before, this is how she told me how it went down, is that the police showed her pictures of Gary that were doctored. I mean, this is before Photoshop. This is 1978, right? But there was different pictures of the real Gary Mathias. But one had like glass, you know, like, well, Gary wore glasses. So maybe one with a mustache, which Gary didn't have at the time, I think. And then, you know, just like a hat or something, just different pictures of the real Gary, but were disguised. So I thought that was kind of weird because they usually just show you 5 random guys, one of them being the real Gary and maybe 4 that weren't.
Right.
But the way she explained to me was they were all photos of Gary, but made to be disguised. So I thought that was kind of weird. So if that's true, that leads a lot of credibility to her story.
Well,
why would they even show?
That's how she explained it to me.
Like, as
why
if
would they even show her lineup? Because she knows what Gary looks like.
Well,
but she said it was Gary, but disguised Gary. So I don't know, man. It was weird.
Yeah, it is
weird. But she believes she saw him, and there was other sightings. It wasn't just her. There was other sightings of him.
Well, the only logic I could see would be that, like, maybe they had an inkling that he was still alive. So therefore, like, showing them a random photo lineup wouldn't do any good to somebody that already knows him. But showing different variations of the person they think might still be alive would make more sense, right? Like,
it's still crazy.
It's weird. I've never heard of that.
That's super bizarre.
I've never heard of that. I've never
heard of that ever.
If the police could verify that that's what they did, then that would give a lot of credibility to that story. And I think she believes it. And I think the incident did happen, but do we know for sure it was Gary? No.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
most people
no
think
way.
there's no way Gary made it out of that. But I say this, the more you know about Gary Mathias, that dude is a survivor. I mean, forget the schizophrenia or whatever
Yeah,
else.
he's a
Maybe that's
Rambo.
part of it. That guy's an absolute badass Rambo. Like the story of him walking home 560 miles from Portland, Oregon,
Whoa.
back to the Yuba County area, back to all of Hurst where he lived, a little town outside of Yuba City. You know, by all accounts that happened. Like the guy would like literally like live off of people leaving like milk out for their cats and stuff. And that was Gary. He was just this gritty guy.
Right. Yeah.
He was in some kind of mental institution. He broke out through the plumbing, like a la Shawshank
Yeah,
Redemption guy.
Yeah.
And that was Gary. Like he made it all the way home from Portland from his grandmother's, and he showed up where he lived with his mom and his stepfather, Bob, and he literally didn't know who they were. He just knew that he lived there, you know, like an animal, you know, because he was off his meds, but he just knew instinctively where he lived, but he had no idea who his own mother
and
was.
he had 8 dog food, right? And
dog food, cat,
stole
whatever.
Milk off of
off of porches. Yeah, that's
right.
how the story goes.
The first question would be, why would Gary go back to the bar? But then, like in this situation, if you know this background story, then you're like, okay, well, if he's off his meds for this long, if it took him this long to escape whatever he was escaping, he just might have that memory in his head to go back to this place, right?
Yeah, it was just ingrained in him, like, you know, kind of like an animal, you know, could get lost for 20 miles and suddenly make it home somehow. It was like that, but he didn't recognize his own mother and stepfather when he made it home.
Did anybody else in the bar see him sitting there? I mean, was there other witnesses going, yeah, there was a guy?
You know, when she told me her mother, she pointed him out to her mother, who I don't know if her mother knew Gary well enough to have been able to say, yeah, it was him. But there was other sightings of Gary, but, you know, they were spotting these, you know, well, when they were missing, they were spotting them all over the place. But I think there was, you know, quite a few sightings of Gary. You know, he was down at the Dairy Queen, you know, having a double dip or something. I mean, he was everywhere,
right?
You know, but she did know him. You know, she knew him pretty well, and she never forgot, you know, that incident of seeing him at the bar. You know, and never saw him again. But you know, she took it seriously. Knew Gary well. It's, you know, obviously knew him on a first name basis. It wasn't just like she'd seen photos of him. I mean, she knew him. And went immediately to the police. So she believes she saw him, which is stunning.
Shout out to Susie Heath for thank you so much, Susie, for the $10. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Susie.
Susie, you rock. So what do you, Drew? What do you think? I mean, okay, we've had some sightings of Gary. Do you think he's dead, or do you think he's alive?
You know what? He might be. I mean, this guy left this cryptic message on this one message board. Of course, almost 99.9% hoaxes, I know, but it was on, you know, this one website where you have to register to be part of. It's Megan's website with the missing people, which is kind of weird because there's like a Yuba County 5 group. So it's a really odd place to put a hoax message. But the guy said that he knew where Gary was and that he was homeless, and you know, I don't want to get involved, but somebody should tell his family. So immediately I got on there and said, man, I know his sister. I can call his sister right now. Like, here's my email. I put my phone number on the message board saying, call me. Right, of course, the phone never got that call, but you know, he got my attention.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's a Charlie Project is the site I'm thinking of, which is really good missing people website. So you have to actually, register to be on that. So it's not like weird. It's not just a random wherever to put that. So it was no trolling at all, you know. And it's kind of a group where you don't get any instant answers either. Like you could post a message, it might be 2 weeks till anyone responds.
Right.
And I just happened to see that when the guy posted it because it went into my email and it got my attention. I'm like, I mean, it was really strange place for a hoaxer to be. And the guy, of course, never called me. He never left another message, but he said, yeah, I know where he is. He's homeless. He doesn't know who he is, blah, 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 which all makes sense. I mean, I'm sure it was just a hoax, but I wanted to follow that hoax.
Yeah,
man.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I wanted to know if it was real. Call me.
Yeah.
You know, I think my rational side thinks he just got further out and died, you know, and they just never found him. I mean, that's what most people really do believe. He just got further out, but I put about 20-25% chance out there that he made it. Just because
would that lead more credence to him being guilty?
Anyone
though,
else?
Having
no, I don't think so. I think he just got, he started losing his mind at that point.
Yeah.
And maybe that schizophrenia is what allowed him to survive in those conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
his mind's so screwed up, he doesn't just go out in the snow and get tired and just lay down and die of hypothermia. It could have been that spinning in his brain that just kept
Right.
him going, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Charles, thank you so much for the $4 super sticker, man. We appreciate it. Awesome.
you,
Awesome. Thank you so
Charles.
much.
Well, it's just
This
beyond.
is the craziest case in the world.
Yeah,
One
and
of them.
that's just some of the
Drew
theories.
really knows how to pick them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
this one's
then,
fascinating. I mean,
yeah, it is.
and
it is. It's American the Outlaw Pass. I mean,
Yeah.
you can share briefly. There's this was kind of weird. A guy who became a pastor in your book, I
Mhm.
think, and not only the name was there was two different people and the names were different.
the names are different, but the two people did know each other, which
Oh
is
my-
what's interesting.
Yeah, tell Garrett
Yeah,
or tell the
It's
viewers
really
a little bit.
weird. It's really
about
weird.
that.
So one of the I'll tell you the most prevailing theory among the families as a whole. I mean, I don't all believe it, but some of the families really believe this theory that Gary was the victim of foul play by who we'll just call the town bully. This person's still alive. They still live in Yuba County. And this guy was a real bad actor back then. You know, this guy was a tough guy. He was an enforcer. If he wanted to hang around you, you'd hang around him because you would be in complete fear of ever telling this guy no. This guy didn't put up with any BS. He'd been in prison a lot. He knew Gary Mathias well, and he had beefs with him throughout the time that they knew each other. And a couple occasions he said, "I'm going to do something to this guy." And the story goes that the boys went to the game, of course, up at Chico. They win, and somehow they're followed from the game or somewhere else on the way home, and they're followed to the Oroville Dam. And everybody gets out of these cars. It's this town bully guy and a couple more of his guys hanging around him, and it's all five guys of the Yuba County Five. And they're all out of the car, and as the story goes, they start picking on Jackie Hewitt, who's the easiest guy to pick on. And Jackie would make this wheezing kind of noise when he got nervous. He'd go like, because he just he couldn't think that well, and he'd get real scared. And he was making that noise, and Gary Mathias was going to step in and defend him, and winds up throwing down with these other three guys, including the town bully. So the net result of this brawl was Gary getting thrown over the Oroville Dam and down into the water and never to be seen again, like killing him. And I can tell you that theory is pervasive in the Yuba County area and among some of the families. I can tell you two of the families, one for sure absolutely thinks this is what happened. And then another guy that was friends of the town bully drives Jack Madruga's car up with the remaining four guys up to Rogers Cow Camp and either forced out at gunpoint and made to flee up the mountain, and that's why they all make it to the trailer. Well, the big wrench in that whole story is that they found Gary's tennis shoes in the trailer. So obviously you can't really sync those two, other than maybe Gary got knocked out of his shoes, or Gary's shoes came off when they were already off in the car, and one of the boys just didn't really understand what happened to Gary, so one of the boys just took the shoes with him. That's possible. I mean, it's far-fetched, but I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility, because I can tell you, outside those shoes of Gary's being found in the trailer, that theory is very prevalent in the area. Among families, they believe it. I don't know if it's just because it had time to be told over the years. It just kind of got brought onto a life of its own. The guy that they think that would have done this, certainly capable. I mean, no doubt about it. This was one bad hombre.
Is he still living?
He's still living. That's why I won't be uttering his name here. But he's still living. He's an older guy, but he's still alive.
Was this one of the guys that Janet almost killed? She brought.
Well, that guy, that's where it gets really crazy. So Janet is Jack Madruga. He went by the nickname Doc, and that was his sister is Janet, and she had done her own investigation to figure out what happened to her brother, and did all this research, and she ties it. Ask all these questions. She kept a really meticulous notebook, and she never was without that little notebook, and she kept that in her purse for years and years, and she told her niece, also Jack Madruga's niece, always the same person, that she had found who was responsible for what happened to her brother, and obviously the rest of the boys, and that this guy was a pastor. Well, the town bully guy became a pastor, so I'm thinking this has got to be the same guy, right? But it wasn't. It's a different name. So
That had
she
to
meets
blow in
this.
your mind.
That blew my mind when
Yeah.
the name didn't
Wait,
match.
did you just say the town bully became a pastor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, straight. Yeah, that's how it goes down
And
there
then-
in Yuba County.
And then when Drew's he's expecting the
And
same
I know who he
name,
is.
Right.
and then he
yeah.
gets a different name altogether.
Then I got a different name entirely from the one I was
Wow.
expecting to hear. Of course, I know the guy's name, and it wasn't the same name. I was like, "Whoa! How many?
Yeah.
How many preacher turned murderers are going on
Yeah,
in this place?"
seriously.
And so that was really strange. But she met up with this guy who she thought it was at a bar and brought a gun with her. Was planning to kill him right there at the bar.
Wow.
You
Shoot
know,
this
to
guy.
get revenge. Yeah, her brother was.
Yeah.
You know,
So
they
for-
think there was foul play that killed her
Yeah.
own brother, so she wants revenge, and she couldn't go through with it. You know, of course, she just didn't have the willpower to pull it off. And then the guy was like, "Yeah, you whatever, yeah." You know, he never admitted to it, but you know, she was gonna blow him away, but basically just confronted him and said, "I know you did it. It's wrong what you did. Or, you know, I could kill you, but I'm not." And then that was the end of the story. But the names didn't match. But the name that she gave was somebody that knew the town bully guy. So they did know each other. They did hang around each other for a time. They weren't necessarily friends, but they were in the same group. They both absolutely knew Gary and Mathias in 1978. So it's just weird. Either she got her wires crossed, or they were both involved.
Right.
But or maybe she ran into that story late and the name just got flipped somewhere.
Right.
Because the name she gave was a guy. Actually, I was wrong. That guy was never a preacher. But he did know the preacher. But the second guy actually was not. He was actually a construction guy, but he did know all them. So to this day, we don't know where they involved or not. And then you have to explain the tennis shoes. But tennis shoes aside, some of the family remembers you cannot talk out of that theory. They firmly believe it. They'll go to their graves believing that's what happened. Was that Gary got thrown over the Oroville Dam, and another guy got into that car and drove the rest of them up there to Rogers Cow Camp and forced them out at gunpoint to run up that mountain. They believe that, and they won't change.
What do you think about the watch? I was thinking about that on my way home today. Could that possibly have been one of the Rangers left it? Maybe
it could be.
Or
I don't know if they ever
did
followed up
anybody
on
ever?
that.
I didn't. I mean, surely they would have probably. I would think would have asked, "Hey, does this belong to any of the Rangers or anybody?"
I don't know. I hope the podcast covered that, because that would be great.
Yeah,
Because that's something I don't know.
because that makes.
I know the
really
families didn't claim it.
suspicious. Yeah,
It is weird. It's really weird how they would leave that watch. And I mean, it was a Walthman. I don't think it was a particularly expensive watch, but it was decent. And you think they would at least track down the Ranger that may have left it. You know, like, how long was it there? And it was literally on the bedside table next to Ted, where they did find Ted's one of his rings and I think another piece of jewelry. So Ted's stuff was right there with that watch, but it was not Ted's watch.
but it wasn't Ted's watch.
Or any of the other boys for that matter.
Man.
So I would love to know who owned that watch.
Like, just what popped in my head is also thinking, what if Ted was actually the focus and he let the other guys run, but he kept him there, starved him, you know what I'm saying? And just, I don't know. I mean, I'm just reaching for straws, just trying to think of what it could be. But maybe the guy who we thought protected him actually was just sitting there watching him starve to death.
Ooh.
Yeah, he just didn't know any better. And then,
well, that's true too. Yeah.
Maybe they thought it was stealing. They just couldn't do any more food because they just thought in their minds, this is stealing. This isn't our food. Even though they were starving to death. So maybe
Gary,
I don't know.
if Gary was there, I would think Gary had the most sense. And
he did.
That sounds bad, but I don't mean it bad. But Gary would have said, "Hey guys, we're going to use this food. We're all going to use this food. And we'll pay him back."
Yeah, and why would Gary have not have that? That's one of the best things to point against, maybe, of the theory of Gary being thrown over the dam. That could be true, because Gary Mathias absolutely would have started a fire unless he was really afraid. I mean, because he didn't scare easy, so he would have been the first guy to have started a fire freezing like that. And why wouldn't he have done so? He couldn't have done it if he wasn't there. But then you get to the P-38 can opener. So it had to have been either Jack Madruga or Gary Mathias, because the rest of them would absolutely not know how to use that. And I think at least 3 of the C rations were open with
all
one.
my buddies in the Army still carry their P-38s on their keychain. Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, the thing about it though is like even that little aspect to this case, that 2 of the 5 know how to use the can opener.
Right.
1 of the 5 may have not been there, right? So so it's just like every which way you turn. If this theory is
and then the fact that they even started eating the MREs, thinking, why didn't they just stay and keep eating the MREs?
Yeah. Why would you only stop at that amount? Yeah, knowing that Ted was there for a minimum of 8 weeks,
right.
There should have been far more, even for just him.
Yeah,
there should have been far more than what was found there.
Is it a time slip?
And there was,
I don't know, maybe
simulation theory.
Now, you were in the military. MREs, they're not huge meals, right? I mean,
no, but I mean, like, dude, if you ate one a day, you'd be fine.
Really?
Yeah. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, you'd be fine. You can make it last.
Yeah. Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
But why would they stop it though when they had?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, they had tons of them.
Exactly
Enough for all 5 to live a year.
Yeah, an entire year. I mean, you could be like 400 pounds eating them, right? Like,
so why was there only? There was just some. I mean, there wasn't this huge amount at all.
Well, and
it's just baffling.
Looking at the trailers, way bigger than I expected. I was thinking of like some Chris McCandless kind of situation. Do you know who Chris McCandless is? True.
I think so.
He like went out in Alaska. And
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
like a little trailer or something.
Yeah. But no, this is like 2. I mean, there's plenty. There's 2. Yeah. There's plenty of
2 trailer, maybe 3 trailers, right, Drew? Or was
there? Yeah. I think there was. I think there was 4, but they were in a row like that. Like when you were showing the picture of it, that was their actual trailer.
Even if one of the windows is, you know what I'm saying? Like you could sit.
The thing that still gets me is the helicopter not seeing the trailer.
That's what I'm saying. Is it a time slippage or something? Yeah. Like, how does this all happen? This concoction, right? Like,
yeah. So before we let you go, Drew, do you have a gut feeling about this? Do you anything point to anything?
I always go to Joe Shones. I can't help myself. Like I mentioned, Tony Doug Wright, that knows this case even better than I do. He agrees with me. We think that Joe Shones had a level of involvement. The one person we know that knew him kind of feels personally. He said, worse, he probably just could have sent him in the wrong direction just for being the town drunk, just for the hell of it, but his own cousin even felt that he didn't, that knew Shones a little better, just said he didn't think he was capable of actually, plotting or wanting to kill them, but maybe at minimum, just kind of sent them up in the wrong way. Just because he didn't care, he's just a rude guy,
Right.
But I can't see how he's not involved. I can't. He had to have been involved. I think maybe they encountered him lower down the road somewhere, and they were gonna get him some form of help. And like people say, like some of the commenters were saying on here, that area is just so weird, and you got all these guys living off the grid, and lots of harm could come to them. It could have been just because they were. They were considered mildly retarded, and they were easy targets other than Gary, and they didn't plan on Gary, and maybe just followed them like some bullies wanting to rough them up, and just something went wrong, and maybe they ran into Shones, maybe they got chased and then ran into Shones, and then Shones said, "Hey, drive me up this road. My medicine's up there. I need help," and then. Something like that, something in the mix.
But
it wasn't just taking a wrong turn. It's just
right, and it would have had to have been more than that, because the boys, even if he said, "Take me up this road, I'm going to get my medication," they would have still got back in their car and left. I mean, something scared, like you said,
something scared them
or scared them so bad that they took off running.
And that's another reason you get the Outlaw Pass comparisons, because it was this unknown, compelling force. That must have 5 grown men, even though 4 of them were, just call it slow, to go up that mountain that way in street clothes, and must have fled. Like the window being left down, which she never would have left his car. Something scared the hell out of them. But then you have to account for the fact that the car is not being rutted. So obviously they're not in distress till they, stop, and then maybe the window rolls down, and then maybe that's where you get into supernatural. UFO, Sasquatch scared them. But there had to have been a reason. Like you said, why would you keep going up that road? Him knowing like he's risking the car at all, even being up that road. Right. So there has to have been some form of goal going up there.
Something scarier down there. Yeah.
Is it possible? I mean, did he own a handgun or weapon that we know about? I mean,
he definitely owned a shotgun or a rifle. I can't remember which one that he was firing indiscriminately. So that day, and almost hit a kid with it, and they, I don't
So
know
the
if they ever
shells
matched
they
anything. He definitely owned
found-
guns. There's no
Yeah.
everybody owned guns up there.
Right. But the shells they found near the car, were they shotgun shells or were they handgun
I'm
shells?
not sure. I never heard if they were matched a handgun or
Because I could
shotgun.
see
Or,
maybe if Joe got him out of the car and he just started shooting in the air and scared him enough, they just took off running,
Yeah, for
thinking
sure.
he's chasing them, maybe, and he's still shooting at them.
But for what?
just being a drunk.
Being a drunk.
Just
Yeah,
being mean.
I'm glad
That
you said
makes more sense than anything
I was gonna
else.
say something. Okay, so
They found shells at the scene.
It does. No, I don't drink anymore because I continue to kind of be an ass. And I normally, like, Cass can tell you this. There's been a couple instances where people have asked me directions, like when we're in a city, and I'll give them completely wrong directions.
Oh, Garrett.
Like, and just because I'm being a drunk ass, right?
Okay.
So when
Yeah,
he said
that's
that, I
what
was
he was
like,
doing.
oh,
He would have done that
just
at
being a
minimum.
dick, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being an ass, and like you said, and picking on some kids, right? That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I could see him maybe, like I
Mm.
said, more so than that, like he starts firing, and these kids would be terrified.
Oh, for sure.
And let's just say,
Terrified. Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe
let's
even
just say
Gary
he
wasn't up
shoot-
for it that night.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's just say he's shooting over their head, and they're like, "Oh shit!" and they keep running, thinking he's behind them,
Yeah.
and we keep
Yeah.
running until we find something. I mean, man, that's the only thing I could even.
Mhm.
come
That's the
up
only
with.
thing that would make sense. And then well, Gary would have enough on his medicine, would have been like, this guy's just a blowhard. He's not gonna. I'm sure he's gone by now. Like,
Yeah,
when they
that's
got
true, too.
far
So
enough,
how long-
let's just wait here until this guy
Right.
leaves.
Yeah.
So
that
we can go
doesn't make-
back to our car and go home.
Right.
Yeah, Drew,
Why
you're
would
exactly right.
why would they just keep going? I mean,
Yeah,
like
that's
around
a
corner
long,
syndrome and then going
treacherous-
uphill and not downhill. Even for people like them, why would you go
Right.
up and not down? Something scared the hell out of those guys, including Gary, which didn't scare easy. So I just think you need a little more firepower than just Shones, but I just
Yeah.
believe he's got a part in it. I do. I can't shake it. I can't prove it, but I can't shake him having some level of involvement, either intentional or unintentional, or just just being a jerk and send him in the wrong direction at the minimum, had something to do with this. He had no business being that far up that road that night at all. Even drunk, he had no business being that far up,
Well, even
Right.
more so,
where he
drunk,
was at
right?
risk of
Like,
dying. He was
yeah,
at risk of
like-
dying himself
Yeah.
in a
yeah,
car
yeah,
that's not the best car to be in. VW
sure.
Bug that far up the mountain.
Yeah.
He had no reason to be that far up the road, and he
Wow.
was definitely up there that day. So that's what, if he just made it up out of the blue and there was no sighting of him anywhere that day, or his car being stuck, then I think, okay, this guy just made it up to insert himself to be important.
Right.
Right.
He's from the area, read the article. Oh yeah, I saw him.
Yeah.
But the thing is that he was up there. That's what you can't separate.
Other
with that.
people saw him. Yeah.
Yep.
I can't wait till Thursday.
Yeah,
wanna
who knows
see-
what
yeah,
they have
I
uncovered?
wanna
I'm
see
fired
that.
up. Yeah, this is going to be the deepest dive ever. I don't know. You're going to hear from a lot of the people that were involved and family members directly.
Yeah.
Are on this podcast, and I think it's 5 parts and 2 are coming out Thursday. So that's going to be fantastic. It's a Yuba podcast on Instagram.
Oh no.
Uh-oh, we lost. Hang on.
No, he's frozen.
Your
dude.
screen froze.
He's frozen in time,
Yeah, completely,
dude.
didn't it? Well, we'll keep talking until you oh,
there you are.
there you are.
Cut
Okay,
out for a
yeah.
second.
Yeah, well, it's about that time we shut this down. But Drew, thank you so much for
Fascinating
coming
as
on.
always.
Also, all my listeners, I've read 2 of his books, the Zodiac, Sighting In on the Zodiac,
That
and
was
the Out of Bounds.
incredible.
They're both fantastic.
DB Cooper's next.
DB Cooper is I put a whole list
There
of.
you are.
Yeah.
Oh, are you there? Okay.
Okay.
And I put a whole biography of Drew in the description, and this tells every book he's written, where you can get them. So you guys go down there and buy,
Yep.
support Drew on this, man. These books are good.
Man.
He did a lot of research. He did a lot of work.
Oh,
They're
this has
they're
been
worth the read.
crazy.
Yeah. The best Yuba. I mean, that I scoured and scoured and scoured, and your stuff was by far the most interesting to read.
I see people talking
Um,
about they're going to buy it.
Yeah, good.
Appreciate
buy-
it, guys. Yeah,
yeah, go buy it
definitely
now.
that. And please go check out this podcast. It's
Yeah.
going to be so good. And they put a lot of work in it. And it's going to be the culmination of, what I found out, and Tony Doug Wright and Shannon McGarvey, the producer of this. Man, her research has just blown me away, and I think I'm a pretty good researcher, and she just really hit it out of the park with this stuff.
And you have a part in it, right? You're
Yeah,
interviewed with it?
I have parts in it that I recorded for it, but I haven't seen or heard the finished product. All I've heard is the trailer, and it's great. With the interviews from some of the family members and people are involved. Like I said, I think the guy that found Ted's body is on there. I mean, that's huge.
That's big time,
wow.
man.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
they really went to the ends of the earth, and they've been working on this even before I started the book. They've been putting this together. I think it was originally going to be a documentary, but it wound up being a podcast. But they've been working on this for 4 years.
Sweet.
Long time, a lot longer than I worked on the book. So it's going to be really good.
Can't wait.
Awesome. Well, Drew, you have a great night.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you
time,
so
man.
much again.
Yeah,
for your
thanks, guys.
time.
Enjoyed
Your
it.
knowledge.
And let's have you on for DB Cooper next.
Can't wait.
Yeah, that's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, Drew.
All right, good night, Drew. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Dude, he's awesome, man.
Yeah.
He is impressive.
And the thing is, man, he's a great storyteller.
Yeah, he's just very articulate, but he knows the cases though.
Yeah, and and the guys, his book is the same way. It reads really, when I say really easy, I don't mean like simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I love that.
Easy read. And
we always talk about how investigating, guys, if you investigate these cases, it gets real murky and crazy. So to have somebody that's able to straightforward kind of just tell you the story in a good, entertaining way,
and that's what he did.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, what he did was he basically, and he said this. He said, I'm going to lay the facts down for you. You take what you want, and if you figure it out and see what you think,
Okay,
and
so did you figure it out?
No,
well,
this is a case. Like I said, and even when I thought, oh, I got a great idea, Drew shot it down. He was right.
Yeah.
If he's firing at the boys and they kept running, at some point they're going to say, okay, I don't hear shots anymore. Let's get back to the car and get the hell out of here.
But also, though, I mean, to that point, you never know how you're going to react until somebody's shooting at you.
I know. But I mean, but even let's say you get to the shack.
I see this path.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's say even you run that far during the next day. Hey guys, as a group, let's try to get back to the car.
Unless people just go missing en route.
God, this is the weirdest. I
feel like it. Okay, here's what's wild about it. I was
about to ask you real quick. Has there been any Yeti sightings up there or Bigfoot sightings? I mean, I'm just saying.
Hey, the Sierra Nevada.
We are a paranormal webcast.
No. I mean, listen, that's up in that area. Sacramento's Northern California, dude.
It's Northern California. There's lots of sightings. Yeah. I mean,
tons.
What could have scared those kids?
Well, here's what
to abandon a car and run into dangerous conditions, and even though they were mentally challenged, they knew this isn't a good idea.
But it's a better idea than staying here.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's it. That's the key. Leaving was the better idea than staying in the car.
Where
they left the tent
from the inside.
But
here's what's wild about this one is that the bottom of the car is, because we know from driving on back roads and mountain roads and stuff that you can really mess up, especially during that time when it's a heavy car and there would have been something below that car messed up. It's like almost somebody with a crane just placed that car there, rolled down the window, which means whatever they were scared of wasn't scary enough for them to take their time getting up there.
Yeah.
That adds a whole other paranormal weird, it was summoning them, right?
Yeah.
Intent. We talked about intent tonight.
And don't you hate stories that you're not going to know what the end of? It's like the elephant in the room. You're listening to this great story, just like Zodiac. You're watching this great movie, but at the end of the movie, you're not going to know who did this.
Right.
You can just speculate, and that's all you can do. But hey, Charles O, again, thank you for the super chat. Susie, thank you so much for
so many new people in too.
Yeah, and Susie gave us a 2 super chats, so thank you very much for the one you gave Susie. Earlier, and thank you for moderating, guys. Pam, she started a new job,
saving lives.
She's a director of nursing, so they're low on staff, right?
For sure.
So she's working constantly. So I don't know when she'll be back.
Yeah,
but yeah, I've seen some new people in here. So. And to our folks, Randy Ray, I've seen you before, Lipshay, of course, or Lipsha.
Yep.
Seen her before.
Randy Ray's all up on this crime
stuff.
Loves it.
D Berlin, hello.
Yep.
So, thank you guys very much. Next week, we kind of have an idea.
Man, I really want to do simulation theory, reincarnation.
And Garrett, go ahead and tell them. Garrett wants to do a show
I
on.
wanted a simulation theory. I was on a podcast last week actually about my job, soccer, teaching and stuff, and we ended up talking about life after life for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And they were like way into simulation theory, and the guy brought up a good point. He was like, "Listen, my dog's at home right now, but how do I know my dog's at home if I can't see my dog? My dog could just be a robot. When I leave the house, it could, you know." But hey, listen, we can tie some string theory into simulation theory. We can tie.
Well, what I thought was interesting too, you brought up the point, and I never heard this. You said something about a film where birds just stop flying in midair.
I've just heard of this.
Like
happening.
the simulation,
For
our
the glitch.
matrix stopped for
Right,
a minute, a glitch in
yeah.
the.
Well, and they brought up a funny thing on the podcast because they both work at the same place, and they're like, "Dude, we like walked out to our car today, and there was just a car like turned over on its side, like it had been in a wreck." And they were like, "Dude, we were like in the office, we didn't hear anything happen. Like we just walked outside." So these things just like happen, kind of like this car, right? On Yuba County 5, it's almost like a crane just dropped it there.
Yeah.
This incident happened. So yeah, I kind of want to go down that rabbit hole of simulation theory. Maybe bring in some.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I think
time slippage, dude.
Time slippage, yeah.
The guy that you talked about that thought he knew he hit something, right?
Yes, yeah, that was crazy. I'll share that with some of you who never heard. There's a guy, he was talking about parallel universes, you know, crashing in each other, things changing, which even goes into the Mandela effect a little bit.
Right.
But he was driving his car. He's on a major interstate. An 18-wheeler was getting over in his lane, and it was going to hit his car. He knew it. He said he felt a jolt in his body, and then when he opened his eyes, he said that truck was like 50 yards ahead of him.
It's so crazy.
And he goes, I know for a fact I was hit by that truck. So he said, maybe that was a universe where I died and I jumped to the next parallel universe where I live. So back in this universe, they're preparing my funeral, that kind of thing. But the universe I'm in now, I'm okay.
Just felt a jolt in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that. I've heard other explanations about that, where people say that they felt a jolt before something major happened that was like life-threatening, where they didn't die. So it's almost like you're jumping out of your body into.
I wonder if I felt a jolt before my big wreck.
I don't know. Yeah, you had a bad wreck.
I could have though.
Yeah,
that's so wild. Yeah, so we'll talk about stories like that. There's some cases I kind of want to tie into too, because I mean, even listening to this, I'm thinking, is there a time slippage? Like, did something? There's just a lot we can talk about. So yes, we'll go down that rabbit hole.
Yes, we will.
Good show, dude.
So I think we're going to do time slippage next week. We can bring Single 7 in on that one.
Great show.
I think he would have fun on that.
Absolutely.
And then he can say, well, he can give us the scientific part of it where we're out of our minds.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining. We love you guys. Susie, thank you so much again. Charles, thank you so much again. All of you guys, thanks for supporting us. And Mr. Drew, thank you so much.
Can we start calling him that?
Mr. Drew, we should.
We're going to have Mr. Drew on tomorrow.
And we need to, you guys watch that. That's going to be incredible. That podcast he's talking about. That's going to be on Thursday.
Their anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be listening for sure on that. But anyway, guys, good night. We love you. And we will see you next week. Take care, everybody.